Thank you both for your testimonies. We'll start a series of 5-minute rounds. Secretary Nichols, the Cuban let's talk about some of these things specifically. The Cuban military has long claimed that it draws its power from the people. Yet Diaz-Canel, like the Castros before him, is using the military to perpetrate the Communist Party's stranglehold on the Cuban people and stifle democratic openings. The regime militarizes the island to shut down peaceful protests and continues expanding the military's control of the Cuban economy, fueling the rise of a new generation of military oligarchs in the process. Now, the Biden administration rightly designated Defense Minister Lopez Miera under global Magnitsky sanctions, but it's become clear that the problem is bigger than one general. So let me ask you, do we agree that the Cuban military has an expansive control of the economy, which stifles out, for example, independent entrepreneurs trying to get a foothold in the country's economy?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The role of the Cuban military, MINFAR, GAESA, in dominating the economy and controlling the largest businesses and placing itself in a position to suck up resources that go into different parts of the country is of great concern. The military's role in repressing citizens who seek only to exercise their fundamental rights of free speech and assembly has been documented for decades, and everything that we can do to prevent that conduct, I think, will be important.
So we agree what the role they're playing. It's a rather nefarious role, but what steps will the Biden administration take to increase accountability for the military's role in repression and to facilitate the demilitarization of the Cuban economy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The administration continues to look at specific individuals to sanction under the full range of our authorities. We look to block resources from moving into military-controlled organizations and companies, and we will continue to prevent military individuals from traveling, and we'll work with allies and partners around the world to highlight the abuses that the Cuban military perpetrates on its populace.
Now, there's a lot more that can be done, and there's a lot more sanctioning that should take place so that people understand that they don't get away with impunity. One of the things we should be looking at is revoking the visas of a variety of Cuban military and Cuban officials' families that have visas to come to the United States. Sends a very clear message that we won't tolerate and give them the benefit of doing what everyday Cubans cannot do. And I really would urge the administration to look at that. We have been talking for some time about how do we facilitate freedom of expression inside of Cuba, particularly through the use of the internet, and you refer to it in your testimony. I understand we have been using and seen an exponential use of some tools that the Department and USAGM have been working on. I won't get into the specifics because we don't want to give the regime greater information about them for circumvention. But why is it that we have not been able to find the pathway to greater widespread internet use inside of Cuba? What are the obstacles that we are facing in that regard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are a number of challenges with regard to internet in Cuba. The first is the amount of bandwidth that goes into the country, which is quite limited. If there were greater bandwidth overall, there would be greater ability to access the internet at higher speeds. The regime uses a number of technologies and techniques to block internet access to individuals, to small groups of people, to specific geographic locations, and actually does not typically shut down the entire internet to the island. So defeating those techniques and technologies is an important focus of our efforts, and I'm happy to go into greater detail with you and your colleagues in a restricted setting.
No, but there's been suggestion that if we did satellite, if we tethered balloons, if we did a variety of other things, that we could more successfully get access to the internet for the Cuban people. We've researched those, and the challenge is bandwidth on the island. Is that what you're saying?
That's one of the challenges, but projecting a wireless signal into the island either from a balloon or an aircraft or from a static location when the Cuban authorities would be actively trying to jam that signal presents a significant technological challenge. And again, I'm happy to go into greater detail on that.
Let me close on Venezuela. I think the administration has rightfully claimed the recent elections as a sham election. I believe other countries have also joined in calling it such. I'm really concerned about, the purposes of EU Commissioner Borrell's intentions. A leaked EU memo showed that he ignored recommendations from his own staff not to send an observation mission to Venezuela. And if we want a credible alternative to the Borrell report about all the flaws and manipulations of elections in Venezuela, it has to be prepared by a credible organization. Can you confirm for us today that the United States does indeed support a negotiated solution as codified in the Verdad Act, and make equally clear that any recalibration of U.S. sanctions will be tied to concrete results at the negotiating table?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and in fact, I'll be meeting with members of the Unitary Platform this afternoon.
Now, Interim President Guaido and the National Unity Platform have shown their willingness to participate in negotiations to restore democracy and the rule of law in Venezuela. However, in a sign of bad faith, Maduro suspended the talks in October because he's upset about someone who was apprehended by the U.S. Justice Department who may spill the goods on him. So it shows where we're at with Maduro. I hope the world recognizes that. My understanding is that Interim President Guaido has been invited to the Summit of Americas. The Summit of Democracies? Is that true?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman, and he'll have a speaking role at that event.
All right. Thank you very much. Senator Risch.